American soldiers in World War II carried plenty of weapons into battle, but nothing proved as reliable in mud, rain, and close quarters fighting as the M3 grease gun. Unlike the flashy Thompson, which was heavy, expensive, and prone to jamming in dirt or sand, the grease gun was simple, compact, and stubbornly dependable. Its slow, deliberate rate of fire made it easier to control, while its quiet crack in the night kept enemies guessing. From paratroopers jumping behind enemy lines to tank crews trapped in tight metal confines, soldiers relied on it to survive firefights where every second counted. So how did this lowly, unassuming submachine gun quietly become one of the deadliest tools in the American arsenal? By the early 1940s, the United States was preparing for a war unlike anything it had faced before. Even before Pearl Harbor, the fall of France made it clear that global conflict was inevitable. The U.S. military began expanding at breakneck speed, introducing the first ever peacetime draft, activating new divisions, and preparing to fight across Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. This rapid mobilization placed enormous pressure on American industry. Factories had to produce ships, aircraft, tanks, and small arms simultaneously, all while working with limited labor, machine tools, and raw materials. Efficiency wasn't a preference anymore, it was survival. In this environment, the standard U.S. submachine gun, which was the Thompson, became a severe liability. While iconic and battle-proven, the Thompson was expensive and overbuilt for a mass war. Even the simplified M1A1 version cost around $40 during the war, roughly $650 in today's money. It relied heavily on forged and milled steel parts, required skilled labor, and consumed valuable machine time that could have been better used elsewhere. It was also heavy and bulky, weighing around 12 pounds loaded, which was far from ideal for fast-moving or confined combat roles. Meanwhile, foreign armies had already adapted to the realities of industrial warfare. Germany's MP40, Britain's Sten, and Australia's Owen gun all prioritized simplicity, stamped metal construction, and ease of mass production. These weapons proved that a submachine gun didn't need fine machining or polished wood to be effective. It needed to work every time in dirt, sand, and chaos. For U.S. paratroopers, tank crews, and mechanized infantry, this lesson mattered. These troops needed compact, rugged weapons that could be carried in tight spaces, deployed instantly, and maintained with minimal effort. The Thompson no longer fit that role. The stage was set for something cheaper, lighter, and purpose-built for modern war. By late 1940, the U.S. Army faced a challenge that went far beyond battlefield tactics. For America, this was now a question of survival in steel and manpower. The upcoming global war demanded weapons that could be produced faster, cheaper, and in huge numbers. Colonel Rene R. Studler, the Army's Chief of Small Arms Research and Development, knew the solution wasn't a beautiful firearm, it was a practical one. Soldiers in the field didn't need elegance. They needed something that would fire reliably, endure abuse, and be replaced in a pinch without bankrupting the government. Studler drew inspiration from the firearms already proving themselves overseas. The German MP40, the British Sten, and even the Australian Owen showed that stamped metal and simple mechanics could outperform costly, labor-intensive designs. With those lessons in mind, Studler paired two men whose skills complemented each other perfectly. George J. Hyde, an expert firearms designer, would build a gun that functioned flawlessly under fire. At the same time, Frederick W. Sampson from General Motors applied his industrial know-how to ensure it could be manufactured at an unexpected speed and scale. Hyde's first creation, the T-15, was a functional prototype, but still overcomplicated for mass production. Refinements led to the T-20, a stripped-down submachine gun built for one goal: automatic, reliable fire. By removing the semi-automatic requirement, they cut parts, simplified assembly, and ensured the weapon could withstand the abuse of war. Every design choice prioritized function over form, and the result was blunt, unpolished, but deadly efficient. Production was assigned to General Motors' Guide Lamp Division in Indiana, a factory more accustomed to headlights than firearms. The M3 was perfect for the facility's capabilities. Stamped sheet metal, spot welding, and minimal machining meant the thousands could churn it out. Only the bolt and barrel required precise machine work. Every other part could be pressed, welded, and sent to the front. By May 1943, the M3 was ready for action, costing just $20.94 per unit, half the price of a Thompson, and requiring far less labor and machinery. It was the ultimate wartime compromise: cheap, fast, and brutally effective. It was no museum piece, no trophy for a general's mantle, but in the hands of a soldier, paratrooper, or tank crewman, it was precisely the weapon the U.S. Army needed: a utilitarian gun born of necessity, creativity, and industrial might. The M3 grease gun was never meant to impress. It was meant to work. Compact and blunt, the weapon measured just under 30 inches with its wire stock extended, and even shorter when folded. Empty, it weighed about 8.2 pounds, which again was much lighter than the Thompson, and just under 10 pounds when loaded with a 30-round box magazine. Its short 8-inch barrel gave it a modest muzzle velocity of around 920 feet per second, but at close range, it hit hard where it counted. The M3 fired standard .45 ACP ammunition at a steady rate of about 450 rounds per minute. That slower pace wasn't a flaw. It made the gun easier to control. Soldiers could keep bursts on target instead of fighting wild recoil. Although it was technically fully automatic only, experienced users learned to slap the trigger, firing single shots when needed. Operating the M3 was simple. The shooter pulled back the bolt using a side-mounted cocking handle, inserted a magazine, and closed the dust cover, which also acted as a safety. Opening the cover made the gun ready to fire. Pulling the trigger sent the bolt forward, chambering and firing a round in one motion. The enclosed bolt system helped keep dirt, sand, and mud out, which was one of the gun's biggest strengths in harsh combat zones. For special missions, the Office of Strategic Services requested a 9mm conversion kit. This allowed the M3 to use standard enemy ammunition and British Sten magazines, making it ideal for guerrilla warfare behind enemy lines. Still, the design had flaws. Early models suffered from fragile cocking levers that could snap if the gun was dropped. The magazine was also sensitive to dirt and difficult to load. These weren't deal breakers, but they did hurt the weapon's reputation early on. The M3 grease gun entered combat on June 6, 1944, carried by paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne during the Normandy invasion. Reactions were mixed. Some soldiers appreciated its compact size, especially during jumps, since it didn't need to be disassembled and could be used immediately after landing. Others missed the solid feel of the Thompson and dismissed the M3 as cheap and flimsy. Over time, experience changed minds. Tank crews were among its biggest supporters. Inside the tight confines of a Sherman tank, the M3 was far more practical than a full-length rifle. Corporal Carlton Chapman of the 761 Tank Battalion was photographed peering from his tank hatch with an M3 close at hand, ready to spray nearby threats if his crew had to bail out under fire. Infantry units also began to trust the weapon. A combat report from the 99th Infantry Division described the M3 as the best tool for patrol work, since it was quick to bring into action and deadly at short range. In January 1945, T. Charles F. Carey carried an M3 while leading an attack at Rimling, France, persuading dozens of German soldiers to surrender before later disabling an enemy tank. Soldiers didn't wait for official fixes. They bent loose magazine releases with hammers, swapped springs to adjust the rate of fire, and jury-rigged charging handles when parts broke. These field fixes kept the guns running when replacements weren't available. In close quarters, inside buildings, narrow streets, forests, and vehicle crews, the M3 proved exactly what it was designed to be. Not pretty, not famous, but dependable when it mattered most. By 1944, the grease gun had proven itself valuable, but it had also exposed its weak points. The Army knew the design was worth sticking to. It just needed refinement. Rather than replacing the weapon, ordnance engineers chose to improve it. The result was the M3A1. The most important change was the removal of the fragile cocking lever. In its place, engineers cut a deep finger hole directly into the bolt. Soldiers could now cock the gun by pulling the bolt back with a finger, which was simple, strong, and nearly impossible to break. The rear sight was reinforced, and the dust cover was redesigned to reduce the risk of accidental firing if the gun was dropped. These fixes made the M3A1 safer and tougher without adding complexity. Small details mattered too. The wire stock was redesigned to serve 3 roles at once: shoulder stock, cleaning rod, and barrel wrench. A welded bracket on the stock helped load magazines, solving one of the biggest complaints from the field. All of this made the gun easier to maintain for soldiers who often had limited tools and no access to repair depots. Only about 15,000 M3A1s were built before World War II ended, but the design had legs. During the Korean War, Ithaca Gun Company produced another 33,200 M3A1s to replace weapons lost or worn out in combat. The grease gun once again proved it could handle cold, mud, and constant use. Beyond U.S. service, the M3 spread across the world. France and the Soviet Union received them through wartime aid. China copied the design as the Type 36. Argentina produced its own versions, the PAM-1 and PAM-2, chambered in 9mm. The gun's simplicity made it easy to copy and even easier to keep running. The M3 also became a test platform. Experiments included a bent barrel meant to fire around corners, an infrared night sight, and a suppressed version developed for the OSS. That quiet M3A1 later armed Green Berets and elite units in Vietnam. Meant to be disposable, the grease gun became permanent instead. The Thompson looked like a masterpiece. The M3 looked like a tool. In war, the tool won. The biggest difference was cost. Even simplified, the Thompson remained expensive and slow to produce. The M3 costs less than half as much and requires far fewer skilled workers and machine tools. That meant more guns, faster delivery, and less strain on a war economy already pushed to its limit. Weight and size mattered just as much. The M3 was 4 pounds lighter than the Thompson and far more compact. Paratroopers could jump with it. Tank crews could maneuver it inside cramped steel hulls. Mechanized infantry could carry it without fatigue. The Thompson, by comparison, was heavy and awkward in tight spaces. Reliability sealed the argument. The M3's enclosed operating system and loose tolerances allowed it to keep firing in mud, sand, and rain, all the conditions where finely machined weapons struggled. It didn't need constant cleaning or careful handling. If something broke, soldiers often fixed it themselves with simple tools. The grease gun was also easier to control. Its slower rate of fire made bursts more accurate and conserved ammunition. It was quieter than the Thompson as well, especially when paired with the suppressor, making it ideal for patrols and ambushes. The Thompson was influential and iconic, but it was overbuilt for a war that demanded speed, numbers, and endurance. The M3 wasn't a pretty weapon to show off, but it was available, reliable, and precisely what the battlefield needed. From the muddy fields of Normandy to jungles in Korea and Vietnam, the M3 proved that a weapon designed to be tough, light, and easy to use could save lives and get the job done. It wasn't about looking impressive. It was about working every single time for every soldier who needed it. If you found this journey into history interesting, hit subscribe and turn on the bell notifications. There are more behind-the-scenes stories like this, and you don't want to miss how clever design changed the course of war.